We need to talk about personal branding, and that is because everyone who's talking about it is talking about it wrong, in my opinion. My name is Kimber Marie. This is my YouTube channel, and in this particular series, I'm going to be giving advice about personal branding. And why I think that I have something worthy to say on this is, one, personal branding got me my ideal job right out of law school. It also got me my 2 internships for both summers during law school. It has brought on so many networking opportunities and introduced me to so many interesting mentors and people. And I firmly believe that personal branding, although I hate that term, I just haven't come up with a better one yet. It's discussed in not the most helpful way, and here's why. Your personal brand should be personal. It should grow with you. There's a lot of people who will tell you, if you do A, B, and C, you're great. For me, when it comes to branding, the values need to be aligned with whatever is being branded. And as a person, you're more than just one thing. You're more than just a lawyer. You're more than just a doctor. You're more than just a teacher, whatever your profession may be. And so it's okay to include all the other aspects of yourself as well. If I'm speaking to, which I primarily am at this point, if I'm talking to law students or students in general who are trying to break their way into an industry like I did, I don't think that you should leave your personality at the door when it comes to personal branding. Basically, I wish people would stop systematizing. Isn't that a word? I'm pretty sure that's a word. Stop systematizing personal brand. It can be organic, it can be authentic, but that comes down to you being true to your values, knowing what you want out of life, what you're trying to do, and sticking to that. The only way you can figure that out is through reflection. Think about it as, what do you want? What kind of values do you want to live by? What kind of person do you want to be? And write that down. Just write down the first thing that comes to mind. This should be the first activity or exercise that anyone who's trying to figure out their personal brand, you have to do this, because if you don't know the answer to those questions, you're not going to have a personal brand. It's not going to come off as a cohesive, intentional thing. And if that's what you're aiming for, then that is why I think you should do that. And now you're probably thinking, didn't she just say to stop systematizing, and now she's giving me an exercise to do to figure out my personal brand? Yes, but here's the thing. I am someone where when I find something interesting, I'm going to share about it. I am very specific about the content that I share. I talk a lot about intellectual property because for the past 2.5, 3 years, that's what I've been working towards. I have, since day one of law school and before, knew I wanted to work in intellectual property. So I cultivated my brand around that because I was already organically and naturally interested and passionate about this subject. So it came easy to talk about it. And that's why when I say systematize, we disconnect that interest and passion from the steps it takes to put that interest and passion out into the world. Just create, talk about what you're interested in. Yeah, you might have to do a little editing and maybe a little scripting here and there, but don't overthink it. Don't overthink it so much that it comes off as robotic or impersonal. And I think that's where people start to feel grossed out by personal branding because it doesn't feel true, it doesn't feel authentic, and that's the problem. You're overthinking it. You might be listening to too many people's advice, which is also very funny, seeing as how I'm making this video. But I think you just got to step back and reflect on what it is you're trying to do. Whether it's a certain life you're trying to attain, a certain job you want to get, a certain experience you want to have, you have to have that in mind. And then figure out, okay, how am I going to put out into the world what I'm searching for? So for me, I spoke a lot on my LinkedIn about IP that I was interested in, specifically copyright. I talked about art law because there's overlap between art law and IP law. And I just kept doing that. And I came to be known as the girl who's interested in art law at my school because people knew me for that. I talked about it with friends. I talked about it with professors. Like, I just put my interests out into the world. My second big piece of advice on this subject is to meet yourself where you're at. What do I mean by that? When we think of personal branding, especially in 2025, when there's a course for everything, there's a system for everything, and we start to overthink it, like, what step do I need to take to make this work? Meet yourself where you're at. If you're a student and you're trying to get your dream job out of law school, okay, and this is going to apply to people who are not just in law school, but for the sake of a hypothetical, because this was my experience, so it's easier for me to speak to that. I was a law student who wanted to work in IP right out of law school. The obstacle is that so do a lot of other people. IP is very interesting. It's very competitive. I also went to a law school that's not like a T14 school, and it's in North Carolina. It's not in New York or LA where you're going to have a lot of IP lawyers because there's a lot of IP there. But it's not impossible, and I am proof of that. These are the 3 things that I advise anyone that I'm talking to about this subject that I swear by, because this is literally what personal branding boils down to like the barest nuts and bolts. Number 1 is you need to meet people. And if you're an introvert, that's going to be like a big red flag. But at some point, you need to meet new people to get where you're trying to go. If you want to find a new job, if you want to move to a new city, it's just going to happen. Now, if you are an introvert, my advice there would be to leverage social media. Again, I know that sounds cringy or maybe nerve-wracking if you're not into speaking on camera. The reason I say this is because, especially on platforms like LinkedIn, you don't even have to post to get the most out of it. Just by commenting and engaging with other people, you get so much out of it. I know a lot of people where they just comment on all these people's posts that they find interesting, people that they would love to talk with. And if you engage enough, you start to create a relationship with these people you've never met before. You've only seen their posts. And then that turns into an informational interview, which could turn into a legit interview, which could turn into a new job or an internship. You get the idea. Meet new people, however that looks for you and whatever your goal is. How can you meet those people where your goal is at? Secondly, sharing knowledge and interest. And if you're a student, especially a law student, you're probably thinking, what in the world am I going to talk about on LinkedIn when I'm just a student? I had that same fear. Like, even now as a new associate, I often think, what do I have to share when I'm still learning everything? That's what I share about. I share about my process of learning things. If I read an interesting article, I summarize the article to my best understanding. And yeah, there's always going to be a risk that someone doesn't agree, someone says I'm wrong, that I make a mistake, but that's just risk of being human. And at the end of the day, you have to think, is the risk of embarrassment, does that outweigh the risk of succeeding at what it is I'm trying to attain? For me, getting a new job, okay, I'll post on LinkedIn, I'll network, I'll be a little cringy on YouTube or Instagram, sharing my process, how I became a lawyer and what I'm learning about these days. Like, I'm fine with that, because at the end of the day, it worked and I got my dream job. And even though being an attorney is inherently stressful, there are days that are stressful, I walk away thinking, I'd rather be stressed in this job than stressed in another job, and that's a good sign. If you want that, you have to ask yourself, am I willing to try something new to get a different outcome? And then finally, the third thing, you have to take action that aligns with your goal, with your vision, with your values, because the second you start to do not that is when personal branding starts to feel gross and icky and salesy and inauthentic, and we don't want that. Everything that I've done has come from a place of, I am interested in this. Like, I want to be here. I want to do this. Do I feel cringy posting on Instagram and TikTok? Yeah, but I'm talking about subjects that I'm genuinely interested in, so I don't mind it. In law school, I only pursued those activities that I really wanted to be 110% there for. Now, if you go to some of my law school advice videos, you'll know that if I could go back in time, I would have tried some of the things that were more litigation related. The reason I didn't was because I was convinced that I would be bad at it and it scared me. That would be the exception to the rule. Sometimes what you're scared of is the thing that you need to try within reason. But outside of those experiences, you need to want to be there. You need to want to do the thing that you're doing. So if you're writing a post on LinkedIn, if you're reaching out to someone, if you're going to a networking mixer or something like that, pick an area, a geographic area, a subject area that you are genuinely interested in, so that way your why is stronger. Because if your why is weak, you will not show up. And even if you do show up mentally, you will not be showing up. Those are the biggest 3 pieces of advice I can give to any student, to any person who is trying to cultivate a personal brand. If you do those 3 things, your brand, it just happens. It just flows out of you. And that's what you want. And that is the final piece of advice I'm going to leave with you. You need to put in the reps. If you put in the reps, if you keep showing up, you keep meeting new people, you keep sharing your interests and your passions and what you're learning in your journey, and you keep taking aligned action, you will end up where you need to be. If you found this helpful, please subscribe, share with a friend or a student who is trying to figure out the whole networking, personal branding thing. Connect with me on LinkedIn. I love talking to new people. I'm actually going to be talking to a law student tonight. I assume about just law school stuff and working in IP, so I'm excited. And if you would also like to chat, please, again, connect with me on LinkedIn. Give me a follow on my socials at Kimber Marie James, and I hope to see you here next time.